Hi, it's Wednesday. That means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, author of Dating a Widower, and today we're going to talk about how big of a role the late wife's family should play in your life after you're serious with a widower. This is a common subject. I see it pops into my inbox on my email at least once a week. I also see it a lot on the Dating a Widower Facebook group. And it's kind of a touchy issue because one of the challenges that comes with dating a widower is that it's different than divorce in the sense that he's probably not a fan of his ex-wife, and generally by extension that means he's probably not a fan of his ex-wife's family. Not always the case, but that's generally how it plays. So if you're dating a divorced man, generally having to deal with the ex-in-laws isn't that big of a deal. But when you date a widower, a lot of times the widower still has good relationships with his late wife's family. Odds are he was part of their family for years and years and has built up traditions and things that he does with them. And those traditions and patterns can sometimes be hard to break. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Is really how big of a role it should play, and what are some things that the widower can do to maybe still have a relationship with his late wife's family, but not make you or anyone else feel like they're second best. So in general, this seems like it's a big issue when there's two factors at play. And again, I'm talking in general terms. Your circumstances may differ slightly. But generally, the late wife's family seems to be a bigger issue in relationships when first the widower has young children at home. So, to these children, the late wife's family is grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and stuff like that. And the second one is when the widower had strong family traditions or strong traditions that he and his late wife celebrated with with his former in-laws. So, it could be that, whatever, they went on a summer vacation every week, or they went on summer vacation for a week together every summer. Or maybe they went to their house for a Sunday dinner every Sunday. Maybe I don't know, they had holiday traditions for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And these are strong traditions that they've done for whatever, 15, 20 years, however long they were married. And these traditions can sometimes be hard to break. And generally, when those two factors are in play, or both factors are in play, that's usually when issues about the late wife's family tends to creep up. Widowers who have children who are out of the house, or maybe didn't have strong traditions with the late wife's family, you generally don't see these kind of issues. And so, the question generally becomes, there's two questions that show up. One is how big of a role should the late wife's family play in our new relationship? And the second one is how does how can the widower kind of stand up to him? So I'm going to tackle the first issue, the first question first, and that is, how big of a role they should play. And it's really hard for me to go in there and say, well, the late wife's family should get 10% of his, time, and you get the rest, or whatever. The late wife's family should have every other Sunday, and there's so many circumstances and so many things going on in this. It's hard to get, really specific without a lot of details. But in general, assuming that the widower gets along with them and has a decent relationship with them, and there's not a lot of animosity or no animosity there, I'm personally not a fan of necessarily cutting them out of the widower's life. I think if you're looking for a relationship where the late wife's family, and again, I'm assuming that everybody's getting along here, and they're okay with you and they're not causing issues, and if they are, I'll address that in a minute. But assuming that people are getting along okay, I'm not a fan of just saying, well, you can't be part of my life anymore because I'm remarrying. I don't think that's fair to them. I don't think it's fair to the widower or maybe his children, again, assuming that there are minor young children living at home. But where that balance is going to be struck, that's hard to say. I think the bigger issue isn't maybe finding the balance, but maybe having, when the widower knows about the concerns, your concerns of, hey, you spend every Sunday, for example, every Sunday afternoon you go over to the late wife's family and have dinner. We don't have dinner here as a family, or, you won't go to my house, or or you won't go to my family's house on Sundays. You're kind of stuck in these traditions, and we kind of need to break out of them. And maybe the widower gets kind of resistant. He's like, oh, we know it's fine. Or maybe the widower even recognizes that it's an issue, but maybe he's kind of scared to talk to the late wife's family. And and say, look, I'm in this serious relationship now, and that means I can't come to dinner every Sunday. Those can be difficult conversations to have. But one of the things I think people need to recognize is that things change in life. Things changed when the widower got married the first time to the late wife. His life changed. He had to kind of build new traditions and kind of do new things. Things changed when his late wife died. And if he's serious and wanting to date again and get into a serious relationship, things have to change again. And to what degree they change again, I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into everybody's personal situation and talk about specific things. But again, I think there has to be that recognition in the mind that I'm choosing to get serious with this person. I'm choosing to possibly spend the rest of my life with this person, or maybe we're getting married next month or whatever it is. But there needs to be that recognition that that things need to change. So let me tell you a little bit how things changed with my late wife's family when I started dating Marathon Girl and got serious with her. Now, for those who have read my memoir, Room for Two, you probably know that, at least with my late wife's parents, we did not get along very well. In fact, we did not get along at all. There's a million reasons for that I'm not going to go into here. But basically, I didn't have any kind of good relationship with them. And so when my late wife died, I pretty much wrote them out of my life. But I did have great relationships with my late wife's grandmother and her brother and some of her extended family, and at least with those, with her grandmother, her brother, and some of the extended family there, they were pretty tight knit. They liked me, I liked them, and we got along really good. Even after my late wife's death, I remember, I'd go over and talk to her grandmother, for a while. I'd spend time with her brother. We'd just go out and spend time together, and it was nice. It was obviously different than it was when my late wife was alive, but they were still part of my life. But then Marathon Girl entered in, and we got kind of serious, and we got serious pretty fast. And I realized, after several months that we were probably going to get married, and things were going to have to change. And it wasn't really my intention to, I wasn't thinking that I was going to cut the late wife's family, my late wife's grandmother and brother out of my life. But I realized that I couldn't necessarily have the same relationship that I had with them before, and there was lots of reasons for that. I mean, part of it is I wanted to have a strong marriage with Marathon Girl. Really wanted a strong marriage, and I knew that that if my attention was focused elsewhere, it wouldn't happen. Let me give you, I don't dive into this too much in some of my books, but let me just give you a little bit of background. One of the reasons that I didn't get along good with my late wife's family was because, there were some issues with her parents, but my late wife always felt that she had to help them in some way, and it was by far my late wife's relationship with her parents was the biggest strain on our marriage. It was hard, and oftentimes I felt like she was giving them more attention than she was giving me, and it was really kind of a straining and a sticking point in our marriage. And I realized that I didn't want a marriage where my spouse came second. Not even, I understand things come up, and but I wanted Marathon Girl to feel like that she was my number one. And so that meant, things had to change with the late wife's family. And so, part of it meant I was spending less time over there. And I'll be, upfront and honest. I was upfront and honest with them that I was dating again. And, I think her grandmother and brother had a little bit of a hard time with that because, it had been less than a year, since the late wife had died. But we're still able to continue a relationship. And then when Marathon Girl and I got engaged, one of the first people I told was my late wife's grandmother and brother. We told her family, we told my family, and then I kind of let them know. And it wasn't exactly the most comfortable conversation I wanted to have. Wasn't necessarily an easy. I actually kind of dreaded it. I didn't know how they were going to react, but I did talk to them. I told them, that I was in love with Julie and we were going to get married, and I told them also that I wanted them to be there at the wedding and the reception and stuff, and they were there. But there's a little bit of pain on their faces, and I think that was natural and stuff. But they were there at the reception, and we got along good. And slowly over the years, her grandmother died a few years after Marathon Girl and I got married, and her brother and I kind of kept in touch, and we just kind of drifted apart. And but really. Uh, what I guess I want you to get from that story, one is that it is possible. I mean, just to some degree, still have a relationship with the late wife's family. I think it has to change, and again, what changes, I don't know. But the second thing is that I think it's important that the widowers that are watching this really understand that you have got to have the guts to be able to explain things to the late wife's family. And again, assuming that you're having a really good relationship here with them, that you got to say, look, I'm getting married to somebody, or I'm getting serious with someone. I still want you in my life, but I can't come to dinner every Sunday. Maybe it's I'm coming to dinner the first Sunday of every month. Or maybe it's like, I can't do the vacation with you guys this year, but maybe next year we can squeeze something in. It's being able to have that relationship where you can have that conversation. And I'm not saying it's an easy conversation to have. I'm not saying that the late wife's family will be overjoyed that you're getting married again or that you have another relationship. But I think that part of the reason I was able to maintain a good relationship, with my late wife's grandma, my late wife's brother, and to some extent her extended family, is that I was open and honest with them. There wasn't any attempt on my part, to hide what I was doing, or, I was just upfront and said, look, things are changing. I still want you guys in my life, but I'm not going to be able to come over as often. I'm not going to be able to do other things, that we've been doing. And I know when Marathon Girl and I were dating, for those who don't know, Marathon Girl, she has a degree in chemistry, really smart, understands stuff that I don't understand at all. But she even tutored my late wife's brother at the time was going to college and having difficulty with some math classes. He would come over, I think like once a week on some evenings, and she would kind of tutor him in math and kind of get him through the classes. We were able to have a relationship to an extent where everybody kind of got along and everybody recognized that things changed. And I mean, I'll be honest, it was probably a little bit easier for me where me and my late wife didn't have any living children. We didn't have any living children that might have made the situation a little bit more complicated. But you know, but I don't regret doing what I did. I think, Marathon Girl and I are coming up in here on 15 years of marriage, and I think a big reason we were able, the reason we're still married and are married is that I was able to put her first, and that doesn't mean again I cut the late wife's family out. But it did mean that I kind of looked at our relationship and figured out, well, what do we need to do to be first? And by the way, if you want more awkward things, so the late wife's family, or the late wife's grandmother and brother and me attended the same church. So, you can imagine maybe what going to church was like a couple of times, just a little bit awkward there. But we got through it. We grew up. And so so just like with any other things in marriage, you need to strike some kind of balance, with your spouse or, your partner, assuming again, you're in a serious relationship here. There has to be something, there. I think honestly, I think if you want the late wife's family completely out of your life, you probably shouldn't be dating a widower. But at the same time, assuming that everybody gets along here, I think the occasional going over to their house is going to be fine. You don't necessarily have to go if you don't want, but I don't think you should be denying the widower that experience in that relationship. I know sometimes I get comments that the late wife's family is, nasty to me, or they hate me, or every time we go over there, they're talking about the late wife and how wonderful she was, and how does it make you feel? And yeah, I think that makes somebody feel bad. And fortunately for Marathon Girl, she didn't have to deal with that, but it still comes down to the same advice. The widower needs to, put on his big boy pants and say, look, I want to spend time here, but this behavior isn't acceptable. He needs to put you first and and say, look, me and my girlfriend, my new wife, whatever, we want to come over and spend time with you occasionally. But if you're going to go off and talk about the late wife and go into all this stuff, then maybe, we shouldn't come over as often or come over at all. So Um, I hope that you can strike a balance. There's no reason that the late wife's family should come between you and the widower. I think it's possible to have a relationship. I know that if Marathon Girl was to die, and knock on wood that she doesn't, but if she was to die, I get along great with her parents. I love my in-laws. I love her sisters. I love their husbands. I mean, she has a great family, a great extended family, and if she was to die, yeah, at least if I wasn't dating, I'd continue going to their family dinners or their family get-togethers. I'd spend time with them. And if I was to date again and remarry, I'd probably still spend time with them, just not as much time with them. And I'd have the guts to go over to them and say, look, I'm in a new relationship. I still want to spend time with you, but things are just going to have to change a bit. But fortunately, Marathon Girl has some great parents, and I think they'd be understanding of that. And I wouldn't want to cut my kids out of grandma and grandpa time or cousin time or things like that. But again, just understanding things change, life changes. And I think a lot of it is, how do we deal with the change? Some people deal with change better than others. But I think if you're honest and forthright with people, if you can have that conversation with them, and take that relationship with them and let them know that you still love them, even though you're in a serious relationship or things are changing, have to change a little bit. I think you can still have a good relationship with people even if you don't see them as often. Hope this was helpful. Please feel free to like, subscribe, or comment below if you have questions about this issue. I will be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with another Widower Wednesday video.